Size highlights of midterm compendium of landmark executive bills initiated by Dr. Alex Otti's administration in Abia State. In line with the Governor's Election Manifesto and the recommendations of the Abia State Transition Council report of May 2023, the landmark legislative instruments were purposefully designed to institutionalize reforms, entrench good governance, stimulate sustainable economic development, and create a socially just and secure state. This documentary is intended to guide stakeholders across all branches of government, development partners, investors, civil society actors, and the general public in appreciating the legislative architecture driving the transformation of Abia State. The highlighted bills and laws addressed key sectors such as infrastructure, energy, internal security, fiscal policy, justice, pension, housing, local government, and social services. All the legislations were meticulously crafted to reflect global best practices while being rooted in local realities. They are not just laws, they are building blocks for a new Abia State. In May 2023, the Abia State Transition Council submitted its report recommending far-reaching structural, institutional, and policy reforms to reposition Abia State. The Council emphasized the need for decentralized and performance-based governance, fiscal discipline and transparency, infrastructure renewal and investment-grade institutions, private sector participation and ease of doing business, human capital development, and inclusive social protection, including security and the rule of law. Governor Alex Otti's election manifesto reinforced these ideas, placing special focus on infrastructure-led growth, rural integration, digitized governance, clean energy, social welfare, and local empowerment. Together, these laws form a cohesive legal foundation for achieving the aspirations of Abia. 1. The Greater Abia Development Authority Law 2023. The Greater Abia Development Authority Law 2023 (GADA Law) is a direct legislative tool for implementing key priorities articulated in Governor Alex Otti's election manifesto and the Abia State Transition Council report of May 2023 ties to the election manifesto of Dr. Alex Otti and his Labour Party's manifesto pillars, which supported economic transformation and industrialization of Abia renewal agenda, development of smart cities and infrastructure, and ease of doing business and investment promotion. The creation of GADA replaced the earlier idea of creating a Ministry of Abia Affairs as advised by the Transition Council, which called instead for the lean but focused development authority modeled after Abuja's FCDA. The GADA law is not just a statutory instrument, it is the legislative embodiment of Governor Alex Otti's vision for Abia. 2. The Greater Ohafia Development Authority Law 2024. The Greater Ohafia Development Authority Law 2024 (GADA Law) represents a critical structural reform that operationalizes both Governor Alex Otti's election manifesto and the Abia State Transition Council report, particularly for the northern belt of Abia State, Arochukwu, Bende, Ohafia, Isukwato, and Umunochi local government areas. It provides a replicable development model previously applied to Abia and reaffirmed the administration's regional equity approach to infrastructure, industrialization, and investment-led growth. 3. The Abia State Pension Reform Law 2024. The Abia State Pension Reform Law 2024 is a comprehensive and transformative legislation that repealed the 2017 pension law and aligns Abia State's public service pension system with the national standards and international best practices. It directly reinforces the reform agenda of Governor Alex Otti's election manifesto and the strategic institutional restructuring prescribed by the Abia State Transition Council report. 4. The Abia State Rural Access Roads Agency (ASRARA) Law 2024 and the Abia State Roads Fund Law 2024. The Abia State Rural Access Roads Agency (ASRARA) Law 2024 and the Abia State Roads Fund Law 2024 are dual independent legislative instruments designed to overhaul Abia State rural and subnational roads infrastructure delivery system, Together, they translated the recommendations of the 2023 Transition Council report and fulfilled the governance, infrastructure, and economic priorities outlined in Governor Alex Otti's 2023 manifesto. They also established the institutional and financial framework necessary for public-private partnerships, PPPs, donor engagement, agricultural market access, and LG-based rural development. 5. The Abia State Ministry of Finance Incorporated Law, Murphy Law 2024. The Abia State Ministry of Finance Incorporated Law, Murphy Law, is a pivotal legal reform that institutionalized Abia State's ownership and management of financial assets through a corporation and sole Ministry of Finance Incorporated. It aligns directly with the recommendations of the Abia State Transition Council's Report 2023 and supports the fiscal governance objectives of Governor Alex Otti's election manifesto. 6. The Abia State Tax Codification and Consolidation Amendment Law 2024. The Abia State Tax Codification and Consolidation Amendment Law 2024 is a focused statutory update to the 2020 Principal Law aimed at improving legal clarity, administrative efficiency, and interagency financial accountability. Though narrow in scope, this amendment is strategically aligned with the fiscal reforms outlined in the 2023 Transition Council report and advances Governor Alex Otti's election manifesto commitments on financial transparency and enhanced internally generated revenue, IGR. 7. The Abia State Local Government Amendment Law No. 6, Law 2024. The Abia State Local Government Amendment Law 6, Law 2024 is a comprehensive legislative update to the 2006 Local Government Law. It operationalizes critical recommendations from the Abia State Transition Council Report 2023 and advances Governor Alex Otti's election manifesto and commitments on governance, reform, democratic accountability, and local development. 8. The Abia State Governor and Deputy Governor Pension Repeal Law 2024. The Abia State Governor Deputy Governor Pension Repeal Law 2024 is a bold legislative act that abolished life pensions and benefits previously granted to former governors and deputy governors under Law No. 4 of 2001. This repeal law is fully aligned with Governor Alex Otti's reformist agenda as articulated in his election manifesto and reinforces governance restructuring objectives as prescribed by the Abia State Transition Council Report 2023. It also reflects and complies with prevailing constitutional and judicial trends against excessive executive entitlements. 9. The Abia State Security Trust Fund ASTF Law 2024. The Abia State Security Trust Fund ASSTF Law 2024 established a specialized and institutionalized framework for mobilizing, managing, and deploying resources in support of security infrastructure across the state. The law gives legal and structural effect to recommendations of the Abia State Transition Council Report 2023 and key security reform commitments in Governor Alex Otti's election manifesto. 10. The Abia State Electricity Law 2025. The Abia State Electricity Law 2025 is not a standalone reform, but the legislative execution of Governor Alex Otti's energy vision. It institutionalizes the state's new energy independence under the Electricity Act 2023. It supports infrastructure expansion, economic development, job creation, environmental sustainability, and rural inclusion. The law is a landmark legislative instrument that directly operationalizes strategic recommendations of the Abia State Transition Council Report 2023 and key commitments of Governor Alex Otti's election manifesto. 11. The Abia State Homeland Security Agency Law 2025. The Abia State Homeland Security Agency Law 2025 represents a significant institutional advancement in internal security governance, directly operationalizes key recommendations of the Abia State Transition Council Report 2023 and commitments in Governor Alex Otti's election manifesto into enforceable laws. 12. The Abia State Correctional Service Law 2023. The Abia State Correctional Service Law 2023 represents a foundational overhaul of Abia State's justice and corrections system, anchoring it on international human rights norms and community-oriented rehabilitation. It operationalizes critical goals outlined in both the Abia State Transition Council Report 2023 and Governor Alex Otti's election manifesto, especially in areas of justice reform, social reintegration, and non-custodial sentencing alternatives. 13. The Abia State Bonds and Other Debt Instruments Law 2023. The Abia State Bonds and Other Debt Instruments Law 2023 provides the statutory framework for the issuance and management of bonds, notes, securities, and hybrid financial instruments by the Abia State Government. This legislation is pivotal for funding Governor Alex Otti's strategic development agenda and directly supports the priorities set forth in the 2023 Transition Council Report and Otti's election manifesto. 14. The Abia State Senior Citizens Law 2025. The Abia State Senior Citizens Law 2025 is a landmark social welfare statute that established a state-led institutional mechanism for caring for elderly residents. It is in line with the Abia State Transition Council Report 2023 and Governor Alex Otti's election manifesto, which pledged to provide inclusive governance, human dignity, and social protection. The law also complements ongoing reforms in pension administration, healthcare access, and community-based development. 15. The Abia State Road Maintenance Agency Repeal Law 2025. The Abia State Road Maintenance Agency Repeal Law 2025 is a necessary legislative cleanup that abolished the obsolete Abia State Road Maintenance Agency (ABROMA), previously established under Law No. 11 of 2011 and its subsequent amendments. This repeal directly supports the institutional reforms recommended in the Abia State Transition Council Report 2023 and consolidates Governor Alex Otti's infrastructure modernization strategy as articulated in his election manifesto. 16. The Abia State Estate Development Agency Repeal Law 2025. The Abia State Estate Development Agency Repeal Law 2025 is a concise legislative action to abolish the Abia State Estate Development Agency (ASEDA), established under Law No. 4 of 2011. It reflects a deliberate strategy by Governor Alex Otti's administration to streamline governance, eliminate duplicated and underperforming institutions, and reassign critical functions to more capable entities, specifically the Ministry of Lands and Housing. The repeal aligns fully with the Abia State Transition Council Report 2023, the Governor's Election Manifesto, and priorities, institutional reform and administration and efficient housing delivery. 17. The Abia State Orientation Agency Repeal Law 2025. The Abia State Orientation Agency Repeal Law 2025 is a legislative piece that repealed the Abia State Orientation Agency Law No. 2 of 2020 on grounds that it is redundant and its functions subsumed under the Ministry of Information and Culture. 18. The Abia State Fiscal Planning and Infrastructural Development Fund Amendment No. 4, Law 2025. The Abia State Fiscal Planning and Infrastructural Development Fund Amendment No. 4 Law 2025 introduced a narrow but important amendment to the 2010 Principal Law. It alters Section 17, changing the reporting line for performance and financial reports of the fund from the Governor of the State to the Ministry of Finance. This amendment is technically modest but strategically aligned with both the Transition Council's reform blueprint and the Governor's manifesto promise for accountable governance. It reinforced the Ministry of Finance's central role in ensuring fiscal oversight, reduced bureaucratic fragmentation, and fits into the broader goal of retooling governance structures for better results. 19. The Abians and Diaspora Commission Amendment No. 1 Law 2025. The Abians and Diaspora Commission Amendment No. 1 Law 2025 introduced adjustments to 3 key sections of the 2021 Principal Law to structure the Commission's administrative reporting and financial oversight. Specifically, Section 3, Subsection 1 shifted the Commission's supervisory authority from under the Office of the Governor to under the Office of the Secretary to the State Government, SSG. Section 20, Subsection 1 redirected the submission of annual budget estimates from the State Planning Commission to the SSG's office. Section 21 altered the submission of the Commission's annual report from the Governor to the SSG, who shall then forward it to the House of Assembly. 20. The Abia State Environmental Protection Agency Amendment No. 3 Law 2025. The Abia State Environmental Protection Agency Amendment No. 3 Law 2025 made structural and procedural changes to the ASEPA Law No. 7 of 1994. Specifically, Section 3, Subsection 2 reassigned ASEPA's reporting line from directly to the Governor to the Ministry of Environment and Urban Renewal. Section 16, Subsection 6 redirected the Auditor General's report from being submitted to the Chief Executive of the state to now being submitted to the Ministry of Environment and Urban Renewal, which shall forward same to the House of Assembly. 21. The Abia State Oil Producing Areas Development Commission, ASOPADEC, Amendment No. 4 Law 2025. The Abia State Oil Producing Areas Development Commission, ASOPADEC, Amendment No. 4 Law 2025, introduced key administrative and oversight changes to the Commission's operational framework under Law No. 9 of 2009. The specific amendments include Section 3, Subsection 1, ASOPADEC is now placed under the Ministry of Petroleum and Mineral Resources rather than functioning as a standalone agency. Section 23, Subsection 2, budget estimates shall be submitted to the Ministry, which will then forward them to the House of Assembly, removing direct submission to the Governor. Section 27, activity reports or detailed accounts and annual reports will now be submitted to the Ministry and the House of Assembly, replacing direct submission to the Governor. 22. The Abia State Fire Service Amendment No. 1 Law 2025. The Abia State Fire Service Amendment No. 1 Law 2025 introduced institutional and accountability realignments to the Fire Service Law No. 3 of 2018. Key amendments include Section 3, Subsection 3 designates the fire service as a body under the Abia State Homeland Security Agency while retaining its headquarters in Umuahia. Section 32, Subsection 2 redirected the submission of audited accounts from the Governor to the Homeland Security Agency. Section 33 mandated that the annual report of the fire service be submitted to the Homeland Security Agency, which would then forward it to the House of Assembly. 23. The Abia State Public Procurement Amendment No. 1 Law 2025. The Abia State Public Procurement Amendment No. 1 Law 2025 introduced targeted revisions to the Public Procurement Law No. 5 of 2012 aimed at enhancing oversight, transparency, and institutional accountability in the public procurement exercise. The amendments, as Section 7, Subsection P, now requires the Procurement Bureau to perform procurement audits and submit biannual reports to both the State House of Assembly and the Supervisory Ministry, Budget and Planning. Section 15, Subsection 5, mandated the Bureau to submit an annual activity report and audited accounts to the Council and provide a copy to the Commissioner for Budget and Planning. Section 19 established that monetary and prior review thresholds shall now be determined by the Commissioner for Budget and Planning, effectively positioning the Ministry for final authority on procurement approval. 24. Abia State Structures for Signage and Advertisement Agency Amendment No. 3 Law 2025. The Abia State Structures for Signage and Advertisement Agency Amendment No. 3 Law 2025 introduced procedural and reporting amendments to the 2012 Principal Law. Specifically, Section 18 II now requires the agency to forward audited accounts and reports to the Commissioner for Information and Culture, the 17 local government councils, and the Auditor General of the state. Section 19 mandated quarterly reporting of the agency's activities to the Ministry of Information and Culture, the local governments, and the State House of Assembly, removing prior submission to the Governor. 25. The Umuahia Capital Development Authority Amendment No. 1 Law 2025. The Umuahia Capital Development Authority Amendment No. 1 Law 2025 updated the governance structure of the authority as established under Law No. 8 of 1992. The key amendments are: Section 3, Subsection 1 placed the Umuahia Capital Development Authority (UCDA) under the Ministry of Lands and Housing instead of operating as a semi-autonomous entity. Section 7, Subsection 2G transferred the approval authority for development schemes and building plans from the Governor to the Ministry of Lands and Housing. 26. The Abia State Road Traffic and Safety Management Amendment No. 3 Law 2025. The Abia State Road Traffic and Safety Management Amendment No. 3 Law 2025 significantly updated the 2010 Principal Law by strengthening the regulatory framework for traffic safety, vehicle inspection, and roadworthiness enforcement across the state. Key amendments include Section 3, Subsection 4, establishing vehicle diagnostic centers in each senatorial zone to be managed by the Vehicle Inspection Unit, to be enforced by the Abia State Road Traffic and Safety Management Agency, ASTMA. Drivers are required to obtain a certificate of roadworthiness after diagnosis. Section 43 introduced wide-ranging safety provisions, including passengers' limits for tricycles and buses, restrictions on load types, mandatory breathalyzer and eye tests, regulation of movement for heavy-duty vehicles, required use of reflective caution signs, penalties for non-compliance ranging from fines to imprisonment. 27. The Abia State Agency for the Control of HIV and AIDS Amendment Law 2025. The Abia State Agency for the Control of HIV and AIDS Amendment Law 2025 amended Law No. 3 of 2010, reforming the governance and administrative structures of the agency by placing it under the Ministry of Health rather than the Office of the Governor. The amendment adjusted the institutional oversight, budgeting, and reporting lines for improved accountability, coordination, and health sector integration. 28. The Abia State Local Government Administration Law 2025. The Abia State Local Government Administration Law 2025 is fully aligned with both the manifesto of Governor Alex Otti and the Abia State Transition Council Report, May 2023. The Abia State Local Government Administration Law 2025 is not only comprehensive but serves as a legal infrastructure for the operationalization of Governor Otti's vision for local governance transformation. It embedded accountability, fiscal discipline, democratic participation, and grassroots empowerment, and is fully in line with the commitments outlined in the Manifesto and Transition Council recommendations. 29. The Abia State Economic Planning and Development Law 2023. The Abia State Economic Planning and Development Law 2023 aligns strategically with both Governor Alex Otti's election manifesto and the Abia State Transition Council Report May 2023 and serves as a legislative anchor for delivering the core components of the administration's reform agenda. The law established the Abia State Economic Planning Board as a statutory instrument to coordinate development across the state, especially aligning state and local government planning, budgeting, and the economic priorities. 30. The Abia State Public Complaints and Citizens' Rights Commission Law 2025. The Abia State Public Complaints and Citizens' Rights Commission Law 2025, the Ombudsman Law, established a statutory commission empowered to investigate administrative actions, enforce citizens' rights, and provide institutional redress mechanisms. It institutionalizes transparency, justice, and responsive governance in line with the reformist agenda of Governor Alex Otti. Indeed, it has been 2 solid years of eventful, impactful, strategic partnership between the executive and legislative arm of Abia State government in the patriotic service of our dear God's own state, aimed at building a new Abia that works for all.